Hello and welcome. In this video, we are going to take a look at how to set up your first HTML file on your Apache web server. This video is part of a larger series of videos that focuses on HTML, CSS, client-side scripting, and server-side scripting. Specifically in this video, we are going to take a look at how to set up your index.html, which is intended to be the default HTML file that will be served by your web server when one of your customers or one of your clients attempts to connect to your web server. Now, again, we are going to be treating this a little bit as a development server, so we're going to be accessing it through local host. But what we're going to do is we're going to set up the process the same as if you were going to do this in a production environment. So right now, you'll notice that I have on my screen the location of my htdocs folder. Now, in an earlier video, we talked about how we would choose the directory that you're going to serve your website out of. That is going to vary a little bit based on your installation, fundamentally of your environment, depending on if you're working with Linux or with a stack. In this case, I'm just going to use the default of htdocs for my Windows installation. And you'll notice that I don't have any files in there. And again, as we pointed out in the earlier video, that results in the user seeing this sort of weird list of the files or the folders in your directory. Definitely not what you would want to do in a production environment. But what we want to do is we want to now fix this by going in. We're going to add a file. In this case, it's going to be our index.html to this folder. And we're just going to put some basic content in it so you can get familiar with the process. So what you want to do is you want to go over to your favorite IDE. I'm using Visual Studio, but there's absolutely nothing magic about it. We're going to go ahead and create a new HTML file. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of text in here under the title. I'm going to call this one Welcome from HTML. And I'm going to also put something in the body here. I'm just going to put a P tag. Again, nothing really that fancy, just something a little silly here. If anything, welcome from HTML. And I think you can guess we're going to do this a couple of different times. What we want to do is we want to go ahead and save this file, and we want to put it in your htdocs folder. Now, this is where you want to be very careful, and that you want to go ahead and name it all lowercase, and you want to name it index.html. And we can go ahead and save it. And now, just to verify that you got it in the right location, you want to come out here to your file system, and you want to verify that you now have your index.html. Now, I'm going to do something wrong in this video. I'm going to start off by just simply double-clicking on this index.html, and yes, it does work. But what we want to do is we want to notice that it's essentially your file system opening the file up with the default application, whatever you happen to have for your default application associated with .html files. In this case, it does happen to be my Google Chrome web browser. It, however, is not being served by your web server. And just to prove this point a little bit further, what I want to do is I want to come out here to my console, and I'm actually going to stop my web server. And so I'm going to hit Control-C a couple of times. My web server is going to be stopped. And then just to prove to myself that my web server is, in fact, stopped, I'm going to go ahead and run my nmap one more time. And you can see here that I do, in fact, not have my web server port up and running, but yet I can easily access my HTML file. While technically not wrong, there's no reason that you can't simply host a website on the local file system and access it. As a matter of fact, it's a great way to do some personal documentation. That is not what we're interested in. Instead, what we want to be able to do is we want to use the web server, in this case, our Apache web server, to serve up the page. And to do that, you simply want to restart your Apache web server. You can come over here to nmap and just simply verify that it is in fact up and running. And you can again see that I have port 80 working. So everything's looking pretty good. And then what I want to do is I want to open up a new tab and go to 127.0.0.1. And unlike in the previous example, you'll see now I have a web page. Now, granted you, it's not much of a web page, but it is the web page that we just created. In other words, it's the contents of that .html file. The difference being is that your web server your web client, in this case, Google Chrome, is connecting to your web server, in this case, Apache, on port 80. The Apache web server is serving to it the HTML file, and your web browser or the client then is rendering. In other words, it's making it look pretty. So hopefully this makes a little bit of sense to you. We're sort of going to be shifting from this file system based approach to a web server based approach. In other words, now what we want to do is make sure that our web server is running for any of these .html files that we are launching. So your next step after completing this video would be to try to figure out how can you put multiple files in this folder. In other words, maybe you want to link some additional files from your index.html. We'll cover that in some later videos as well. But the idea now is you can start populating the root of your htdocs folder with additional HTML files. You'll also discover that you can use subfolders. And again, this is where we're really starting to get started with web development from a web server perspective. So hopefully you found this video useful. As always, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, don't hesitate to reach out to me. And thank you for watching.